Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've got a strange one out of Utah, sent to me by a whole bunch of people, including Caleb, Matt, Kenny, and Rod. Thank you very much, guys. From Manaway. And by the way, somebody sent me a note and said, Steve, I seem to recall that you did a story about Manaway not too long ago, but in print, it says Mantua, M-A-N-T-U-A, Mantua. But apparently it's Manaway, and I looked it up last time, and I got several people complimenting me on my accurate pronunciation because that's not what it looks like. But that's what they say, Manaway. And so this story here is about the Utah town filing criminal charges against residents who didn't get licenses for their dogs who had passed away. So your family pet passes away, and you get criminal charges filed against you because you didn't renew the dog tags. And it's a bad story all the way around. Jeremy Harris wrote this for KUTV, and it's making the news, and I saw this all over Facebook. A town prosecutor, Manaway, filed criminal charges against 16 residents who allegedly failed to obtain dog licenses for their pets this year. Now, the fact that criminal charges are being filed over dog licenses seems a bit much, but the town's effort to step up its enforcement for the dog licensing ordinance has backfired in part due to the fact that several residents in question didn't get the new licenses because their pets were deceased. Brandon Marsh said he received a summons to appear in court in October, alleging he had committed a Class C misdemeanor for violating the town's code but not obtaining a dog license in 2021. He says his dog, Molly, passed away, and obviously he didn't need to get a license for Molly anymore. He says, I was charged for not registering a dog that was deceased. Chief Hamer issued a summons stating evidence was collected but was unable to turn over any evidence to the prosecutor, which then caused the charges to be dismissed. And if you ever look at legal documents, when you are charged with a crime, somewhere there's got to be the paperwork that says, here's what they did and here's the evidence we have to prove that. So apparently, the chief issued the summons stating there was evidence to support this claim. But when the time came to go to court, there was no evidence because obviously the dog had passed away. The chief is listed as a witness on the charges which were filed in Manaway Town, which were filed by the Manaway Town attorney. Now, Marsh's case was dismissed when he appeared for the arraignment in November, and a judge dismissed charges against 5 other defendants. Now, several defendants are upset by this because this is such a serious thing to be charged with a crime, and most cities would make this a civil infraction and give you a warning of some sort to let you know this. A Manaway couple addressed the town council Thursday night saying they attended the town's dog clinic over the summer and they believed they'd licensed their dog appropriately. So the town held a dog clinic at which Shane Perry wrote a check to the vet and didn't realize he needed to write a separate second check for the dog license. He said the confusion has led him to now have a misdemeanor conviction on his record. I was told I was facing up to 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine, he told the council. And then the judge allowed me to talk to the prosecutor. When I explained it to the prosecutor, he said if I plead no contest, he'll recommend no jail time. But you're pleading no contest to a misdemeanor, so you now have a criminal record. He said he now wants to change his plea and is contacting a lawyer to get the charge thrown out altogether. The town council now apparently says it was wrong to charge the offenses as misdemeanors. At the town council meeting Thursday night, the council amended the town ordinance about dog licensing to reduce it from a misdemeanor to a civil infraction. So now they've fixed the problem, except for the people who have the criminal convictions, and of course, the other people who got the notices saying you have to buy this tag for your deceased dog or you're going to get in trouble. Now, I understand that the city doesn't know the dog is deceased, but perhaps they should phrase it a little differently and say, the license for your dog has expired. Please look into this. And they should have a little box that should check and say not appropriate or not applicable. And it would be not applicable if you no longer have the dog for whatever reason. The council member said the state law outlines pet offenses should only be charged as infractions unless there are repeat violations or threats to health and safety. But a council member named George Wooden said the town needs to make things right for the residents who were charged. These were issued incorrectly and against state law and against our own ordinance, he said. We need to make it right for these wonderful citizens and every other citizen who may have been caught in this mistake. Meanwhile, the other council person jumped back in and said, none of us on here can make any kind of legal decisions, apparently in an attempt to cover what they had done. But here's the thing. You can't make legal decisions, but you can change the law, which is pretty cool if you think about it. I'm an attorney. I can give you legal advice. I can't change the law. I'd rather be them and be able to write the laws. Think about that. The town's administrations did not respond to interview requests from a TV station, but Manaway Mayor Paul Nye sent a statement to KUTV saying the town attempted to make contact with residents who they suspected of failing to obtain a dog license. Earlier this year, the persons in town with dogs who had failed to get them licensed as prescribed in the ordinance were sent letters reminding them they needed to get their dogs licensed. The vast majority responded and licensed their dogs. The few people who didn't respond were issued citations as prescribed by the ordinance. It is my understanding that all of the people cited have now resolved their case, and there are no people in town who are facing Class C misdemeanor charges for unlicensed pets at this time. Let's think about this using a parallel example. Let's suppose you have a car. Every single year you get your car licensed, you renew the tags on your car. You get rid of the car. Do they charge you with a crime for not getting the tags renewed on your car? Or do they send you a thing saying if you still have this car, you need to get it renewed? 3 people pleaded guilty to the charges, 3 pleaded no contest, 4 are listed as forfeiting bail, and 6 cases were dismissed. One of the concerns shared by several of the affected residents was they will now have a criminal conviction on their records. I know you've changed the ordinance, and I appreciate that, but it still affects several of us, and now we've got to figure this out, one of them said. Meanwhile, the people in the government positions did not respond to email inquiries asking why criminal charges were filed against residents whose pets were deceased. One news agency has previously reported on issues in Manaway, including when the former mayor said publicly the town should use speeding tickets as a way of fixing budget issues. And that mayor resigned not so long ago. In May, TV station KUTV reported the town did not obtain the personnel file of Chief Hamer from his previous agency during his background check process. So they ran a background check process where they failed to get the man's personnel file from his previous agency, and makes you wonder what the background check does involve if it doesn't involve getting the personnel file. For the astute observers of my channel and those who've been with me for a long time, you'll know that at the end of every single video in the title cards, it says, remember Milo and Wolfie. And I had 2 dogs, 2 Shetland sheepdogs, and they both lived in their teens, and they overlapped through most of their lives. So I got Milo first, and a little while later got Wolfie. And then Milo passed first, and Wolfie made it a little bit longer. And so for about 12 or 13 years, I had both of them, maybe 14 years. It is quite a lengthy time that the dogs were in my life. And if you watch very early videos from the first season I did Lehto's Law, I was shooting in a room where there's a door behind me that I had to leave open. If I closed the door, Milo would come and bark at me. And so I'd leave the door open, and he knew I was filming, so he wouldn't come in while I was filming, but he wanted that door open because they're herding animals. They need to know where all their people are. And so you can see Milo and Wolfie walking through the background from time to time in my earliest of videos. And I guess it would be the next place I went that Milo was no longer with me. I shot a video, and I think it might be Don't Buy an RV, but I forgot which one, but I shot that video, the same day that Milo passed away, and I mentioned it in the video. And I think I started putting Remember Milo in the credits, and then when Wolfie passed away, I started putting Remember Milo and Wolfie. And I've had quite a few people ask me who Milo and Wolfie were, and so I actually shot a video explaining who they were, and I tell the whole story about them. I'll put a link to that video below, because I get asked about that quite a bit. But that answers the question. But I can tell you that if somebody had sent me a notice saying the tags have expired for Milo and or Wolfie, were you aware of that? And if it had a thing on there, I could check a box and say, yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that Milo passed away, but here's the money for Wolfie. I would have been fine with that. If they had charged me with a crime for not renewing the tag on Wolfie when Wolfie passed away, I assure you I would have made national news, just like this story did right here. Because that is an inappropriate way of approaching this. And I know there's people out there who don't care for cats or dogs, who don't care for pets, don't care for animals, who don't care for, anything like that. And so I suppose for those kinds of people, it might be difficult to understand. But for those of us who have or have had household members that were pets, you understand that they are more than just pets. They are family members. And so I'm not going to say that it is the exact equivalent of having a sibling of yours pass away or having your spouse pass away, but it's darn close. It's darn close. So this is a very serious problem, but underneath it was another problem. And that was simply that they would charge people with a crime for not renewing the licenses on their pets without confirming first that they even had a pet anymore or what was going on. Because as the one guy pointed out, there was a document signed by the police that said, we have evidence of what we're saying here. This is true. Turns out they didn't. There's the problem. But the other problem is they're charging these as misdemeanors. That's been fixed now. And yes, it's a good thing they fixed it. It's a bad thing it got this far. And of course, the reason it made national news because the Utah town filed criminal charges against residents who didn't get licenses for their dead dogs. And that headline, when I first read it, upset me. And it still does. So out of Manaway, that's the story. KUTV ran it. Jeremy Harris wrote it. And Caleb, Matt, Kenny, and Rod all send it. Thanks a lot, guys. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. The darkest night in someone's life may be the brightest day in another person's. Life rests on perceptions and misconceptions. You can choose to make things good out of every challenging circumstance.